Ferrari is perhaps the most prestigious car brand ever created, yet for most of its existence, it teetered on the edge of financial ruin. In the early 60s, Enzo Ferrari's operation produced barely 300 cars a year, and nearly every lira was funneled back into racing. He rejected Ford's millions, he buried his own son, and none of it slowed him down. Ferrari's financial crises weren't failures of business, they were the cost of a man who never wanted to build road cars in the first place. Enzo Ferrari was born in Modena in February 1898 into a family whose livelihood depended on the rhythm of industry and the promise of progress. His father, Alfredo, ran a small workshop forging railway axles, an ordinary trade in a city where the future arrived on steel rails. But on a September day in 1908, Enzo's path shifted. At just 10 years old, he stood with his father beside the dusty circuit in Bologna, watching motor cars roar past in a blur of noise and speed. The spectacle left an imprint that never faded. From that moment, the world of racing was no longer distant or abstract. It was destiny. The comfort of childhood did not last. In 1916, as the First World War swept across Europe, tragedy struck. Both Alfredo and Enzo's older brother, also named Dino, died in the grip of the Italian flu epidemic. The family business collapsed, and the home Enzo knew slipped away. He was left with grief and a future that no longer followed a clear line. Conscription soon followed. The army assigned him to shoe mules rather than drive machines. But even this stability proved fragile. In 1918, Enzo himself became gravely ill, surviving only after a long and uncertain recovery. When the war ended, he returned to a Modena transformed by loss. The workshop was gone, the sense of belonging too. He searched for work, clinging to the hope that machinery and speed might offer a way forward. Fiat, the rising giant of Italian industry, turned him away. There was no place for a young man with little money and no connections. Yet Enzo refused to surrender the dreams sparked years before. In 1919, he found a foothold with CMN, a small manufacturer willing to give him a chance as a test driver. That same year, he entered the Parma Poggio di Berceto hill climb, finishing 9th. It was a modest result, but for Enzo, it was proof that survival and ambition could still coexist, even after everything else had fallen away. On the racing circuits of the early 1920s, Enzo Ferrari found himself surrounded by danger and ambition in equal measure. After his start with CMN, he joined Alfa Romeo, a name that carried weight across Europe's racing world. Here, Enzo's skills behind the wheel earned him both respect and responsibility. He was more than a driver. He became a trusted figure within the racing department, learning not just how to push a car to its limits, but how to nurture talent and manage the unpredictable forces of a team. The tracks of this era were unforgiving. Cars thundered across rough roads with little in the way of safety barriers. Every race was a test of nerve and endurance, and every finish line brought relief as much as triumph. It was in this crucible that Enzo formed bonds with men who shared his appetite for speed and risk. Antonio Ascari, a rising star and future champion, and Luigi Arcangeli, whose wit and skill made him a fixture in the paddock. Together, they chased glory from Monza to Montlhéry, their friendships forged under the constant threat of disaster. But the sport's brutality was never far away. In July 1925, Antonio Ascari crashed during the French Grand Prix at Montlhéry. The loss sent shockwaves through the paddock. Letters preserved from that summer reveal Enzo's grief and his growing sense of duty to those who risked their lives for victory. 8 years later, tragedy struck again. Luigi Arcangeli died at Monza in 1933, another casualty of a sport that demanded everything and offered no guarantees. These deaths left a mark that would never fade. Enzo Ferrari began to question the wisdom of chasing glory solely from the cockpit. The thrill of speed had not lost its pull, but the cost had become too personal. Instead of stepping away, he resolved to shape the sport from another angle, to build an organization where drivers might be protected and where his influence could extend beyond his own hands on the wheel. The era of the lone daredevil was ending. For Enzo, the future would be written not just in lap times, but in the lives and fortunes of those who raced under his name. In 1929, Enzo Ferrari gathered a handful of trusted friends and wealthy enthusiasts in Modena and gave his racing dream a new form, Scuderia Ferrari. It was not a car company, nor a factory, but a team, a stable, that would field Alfa Romeo machines on the circuits of Italy and beyond. The prancing horse, gifted by Countess Paolina Baracca in memory of her son, the fallen heiress Francesco Baracca, became the team's emblem. Permission to wear it officially arrived in 1932, and soon the Cavallino Rampante was stitched onto red racing overalls and painted on the flanks of Alfa's most promising cars. Beneath the glamour, the finances were always fragile. Scuderia Ferrari's lifeblood came not from industry or mass production, but from the pockets of aristocrats, industrial heirs, and passionate amateurs. Men like Count Giovanni Volpi and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands paid handsomely for the privilege to race under Enzo's banner. Their entry fees and patronage covered everything from mechanics' wages to the cost of tires, fuel, and travel. Each race was a financial gamble. Winnings and new patrons could keep the team afloat. A string of losses or a patron's withdrawal could leave the workshop silent. Expenses mounted quickly. Engineering new chassis, hiring skilled mechanics, transporting cars across Europe, and paying salaries for drivers and staff. The team's survival depended on constant hustle, attracting new gentleman drivers, winning enough to draw attention, and stretching every lira. In these years, Ferrari's financial tightrope was visible to anyone who looked past the trophies. The obsession with victory came first. Economic security was always a distant second. By the mid-1930s, Grand Prix racing became a contest of national ambition and engineering power. Scuderia Ferrari, dependent on private backers and race purses, faced rivals whose resources seemed limitless. Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, the so-called Silver Arrows, drew millions of Reichsmarks from the Nazi government. Auto Union alone received over $2 million annually, fueling vast engineering teams and relentless innovation. Ferrari, by contrast, scraped together funds from aristocratic drivers and local sponsors, unable to match the Germans' wind tunnel testing or custom engines. Each season, the gap widened. Alfa Romeo, once Ferrari's foundation, was itself under pressure. Mussolini's regime had rescued Alfa during the Depression, but state support came with strict oversight and deep budget cuts. Management imposed new controls, scrutinizing every lira and curbing the independence that once defined Enzo's operation. The partnership that had elevated Ferrari now became a source of constraint, as Alfa's priorities shifted and the freedom to pursue victory slipped away. Racing grew more expensive, while funding grew less certain and rules for spending tightened. Ferrari's ambition, legendary but under-resourced, strained against the hard limits of politics and economics. The conflict over control was no longer hidden. It shaped every decision, pushing Enzo toward a break. In September 1939, Enzo Ferrari's break from Alfa Romeo came with a heavy price. The contract that ended their partnership barred him from using his own name or the prancing horse for 4 long years. Forced into the shadows, he founded Auto Avio Costruzioni in Modena, officially a manufacturer of aircraft components and machine tools. The war demanded pragmatism. Instead of racing cars, the workshop turned out crankshafts, gears, and parts for the Italian Air Force. Yet even under these constraints, ambition refused to die. In 1940, engineers Alberto Massimino and Vittorio Bellintani helped Enzo create a new machine, the AAC 815. Built for the Brescia Grand Prix, the car carried no Ferrari badge. Only 2 examples were made, both retiring early with engine trouble. The war soon closed in. On November 4, 1944, Allied bombs leveled the Modena factory. The devastation was nearly total, but within weeks, Enzo began rebuilding from the rubble. The workshop moved to Maranello, setting the stage for a new beginning. By 1947, the ban had lifted. Ferrari SPA was born. The first true Ferrari, the 125S, emerged from the new factory, powered by a compact V12 engine that would define the marque for decades. At its debut in Piacenza, the car led the race but failed to finish. Enzo called it a promising failure. 2 weeks later, driver Franco Cortese claimed Ferrari's first outright victory in Rome. The V12 song echoed through the city streets and a new legend took root. From bombed-out workshops and wartime scarcity, Ferrari rose, built on risk, persistence, and the relentless pursuit of speed. In the early 1960s, the Ferrari factory in Maranello produced only about 300 to 400 cars each year. Each car was assembled by hand, the work of craftsmen who shaped metal and leather with the same care given to a racing engine. This commitment to quality set Ferrari apart, but it also meant that the company could never chase the mass-market profits of its rivals. For Enzo Ferrari, the road cars were never an end in themselves. They were a means to keep the racing team alive, a source of cash that could be poured straight back into the pursuit of speed and glory. Yet the balance was always precarious. The money earned from selling these rare machines rarely covered the mounting costs of motorsport. Formula One, which Ferrari entered in 1950, brought international prestige but little financial relief. The first Grand Prix victory at Silverstone in 1951 and Alberto Ascari's back-to-back world championships in 1952 and 1953 made Ferrari a household name. But each season demanded new investments, engines, chassis, travel, and the salaries of mechanics and drivers. Prize money and sponsorships could not keep pace with the expenses. The more Ferrari won, the more it spent to stay ahead. Inside the company, Laura Ferrari became the quiet anchor. She managed the books, negotiated with banks, and kept creditors at bay when the cash ran thin. Laura's vigilance and stubbornness often clashed with Enzo's relentless drive to win at any cost. She delayed payments, bargained for better terms, and sometimes pawned personal valuables to cover shortfalls. Her efforts kept the doors open and the machines running, even as the business teetered on the edge of insolvency. The world saw a brand built on victory and luxury, but behind the scenes, survival depended on a handful of handmade cars and the unyielding will of a family determined not to let the dream die. Alberto Ascari's crash at Monza in 1955 sent a chill through the corridors of Maranello. He was more than a world champion. To Enzo, he was the embodiment of Ferrari's early promise. But the blow that truly hollowed out Enzo Ferrari came less than a year later. His only son, Alfredo, known to all as Dino, had struggled since childhood with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. The illness was relentless. Dino's world shrank as his muscles weakened, but his mind stayed sharp, and he poured his energy into engineering, working with his father on a compact V6 engine. On June 30th, 1956, Dino died at just 24. Witnesses recall Enzo openly weeping, a rare surrender for a man who guarded his emotions like state secrets. The loss did not soften him or draw him away from the world of racing. Instead, grief became fuel. He commissioned the Dino 5.6 as a tribute, determined that his son's name would live at the heart of every car that bore it. Racing became both memorial and refuge, a way to outrun sorrow, even as it drove him deeper into obsession. May 12, 1957, the Mille Miglia, Italy's most storied road race, thundered toward its final act. Alfonso de Portago, a Spanish aristocrat and Ferrari driver, pushed his 335S toward the limit on the straight at Gudizzolo. In an instant, a front tire failed at nearly 150 miles per hour. The car veered off course, struck a telephone pole, and tore through a crowd of spectators. De Portago and his co-driver Edmund Nelson died instantly. 9 bystanders, 5 of them children, were also killed. The carnage stunned the country. Newspapers filled with photographs of the wreckage and the names of the dead. Public outrage was immediate and fierce. Within days, Italian authorities banned all motor races on public roads, ending the Mille Miglia as it had existed for decades. Enzo Ferrari was charged with manslaughter, the courtroom drama stretching for years. Though eventually acquitted, the damage to Ferrari's reputation was lasting. No longer just a private burden, the cost of racing had become a national scandal. The prancing horse, once a symbol of glory, now carried the weight of tragedy and controversy. For Enzo and his company, survival would never again be a matter of pride alone. In 1963, the Ford Motor Company arrived in Maranello with an offer that could have changed Ferrari's fate forever. Ford's proposal was staggering: $18 million for control of both the racing team and the road car business. For a company that hand-built only a few hundred cars each year and struggled to balance the books, this was a lifeline, enough capital to erase debts, modernize the factory, and secure the future of the prancing horse. But the contract came with one condition. Ford insisted on the final say in all racing decisions, budgets, drivers, strategy, even which races Ferrari would enter. On paper, it was a standard clause, the kind that protected corporate investment. To Enzo Ferrari, it was an attack on everything he valued. Racing was not a department or a line item, it was the soul of the company. The moment he read the clause, Enzo stood up, rejected the deal, and walked away. The Ford delegation left Italy empty-handed, their ambitions for a European racing empire in ruins. The fallout was immediate and personal. Henry Ford II, stung by the public rebuff, vowed to defeat Ferrari on the track. Ford's engineers and designers were unleashed with a single mission: build a car that could crush Ferrari at Le Mans. The result was the GT40 program, an all-out assault fueled by American money and determination. From 1966 to 1969, Ford's GT40 won Le Mans 4 years in a row. Each victory was a statement, each loss for Ferrari a reminder of what had been refused. The cost of keeping control was measured not just in lira, but in the relentless pressure to match Ford's resources, as Ferrari stretched its own finances to the breaking point in pursuit of a comeback. Fiat's arrival at Ferrari in 1969 brought a lifeline, but not at the cost of surrender. The deal was simple and, for Enzo, non-negotiable. Fiat would acquire 50% of Ferrari, injecting desperately needed capital, but the racing division would remain under Enzo's absolute authority. Production of road cars could grow, new models could be planned, but the soul of the company, its racing team, would answer to no one but its founder. This arrangement let Ferrari survive without diluting the very obsession that had driven it to the brink. Through the 1970s, Fiat's resources allowed Ferrari to weather economic shocks and expand manufacturing. Yet in Maranello, the focus stayed fixed on the track. In 1974, a new chapter began when Niki Lauda, a young Austrian with a reputation for blunt honesty and relentless work, joined the team. Lauda's partnership with Ferrari was demanding and, at times, volatile. But it was also exactly what Enzo needed. In 1975, Lauda delivered Ferrari's first Formula One World Championship in over a decade. He repeated the feat in 1977, even after surviving a near-fatal crash. Each title brought prize money, renewed prestige, and proof that racing remained Ferrari's beating heart, even as Fiat's share of the company grew. By 1988, Fiat controlled 90% of Ferrari. Enzo, however, never let go of his grip on the racing program. Even in his final years, he reviewed race reports, summoned engineers, and made the key decisions that shaped every car sent to the grid. When Enzo Ferrari died in August 1988, the company stood secure for the first time in decades, but the old man's priorities remained embedded in the DNA of every machine that carried the prancing horse. Through every crisis and every triumph, racing was never a department. It was the reason Ferrari existed at all. Ferrari's legacy stands as a paradox, proof that relentless ambition can breed both glory and nearly fatal risk. Even now, the cost of racing excellence consumes millions annually, with Scuderia Ferrari's Formula One budget surpassing $400 million a year. The world still rewards obsession, but the line between brilliance and ruin remains razor-thin. Sometimes, the greatest victories and the gravest dangers come from refusing to compromise. What would you risk for an impossible dream?